There's Bill. Wait a second. Turn that off. There we go. Now I got to turn that audio off as I normally do. Hey everyone, we are live Friday, Final Cut Pro Friday weekly wrap up today. And my guest over here, the California side of the screen, is Mr. Bill Davis.
Is that the orientation? This is east. You're east and this is west?
Well, it's actually it's right on the screen. Because you're on my left and I'm on the right. So I never thought about that. But you
left coast, right coast.
Since there's only two of us, it works out pretty well. Let me just check something. I have, there we go. That's BillDavis.move. I don't want to use that. That's a motion title. Got you in here.
That'd be interesting.
Well, I got you in here somewhere. There we go. There's Bill. And where is me? There's me. Where am I now? Oh, I'm in my face. There we go, down there. So, is there anything to talk about Final Cut Pro Watch? I have one thing specifically.
I think it's weird, I was expecting everything to kind of fall off the radar for a while everybody paid attention to personal safety and navigating this massive disruption in life globally. Right. But surprisingly, all sorts of things are percolating out. And I thought it's been a fascinating weekend from my point of view.
Okay. So, tell me something about it. Fascinating stuff.
Well, you've got all sorts of things. My initial thing that's going to be interesting is that I'm starting to see how NAB is going to try to recreate a piece of like post-production world online. So there will be a lot of topics there. And I've been going to NAB for decades and decades. So part of that process is kind of like a return to where my friends used to gather and I used to see them all. And I've been thinking to myself, I wonder how they're going to virtualize that. But the folks at Post-Production World are managing to do that. So I've been getting some information about the seminars that are coming up and stuff like that. And you and I are probably excited because they have a Final Cut Pro 10 track that's going to be free, which I think is exceptional. That should be a great resource for a lot of people. Our friends at Frame.io just came out with a brand new utility called Transfer that I think has the potential to change a lot of stuff in terms of at-home workflows. There's just a lot of little things. I mean, these companies who I think were all heading towards releases and things at NAB have now realized that NAB is not going to happen. And in fact, they have to retrench their entire operations for this new kind of online digital world. And I think that's starting to happen pretty quickly. And now we're seeing the first little spring buds of what this new normal is going to look like for communications in the professional space.
So NAB is really interesting what they're doing with this online. I'm not sure. I guess are the vendors just going to show their wares and do some seminars and?
I don't know, but the thing is, I think a ton, probably 90% of the people who go to NAB or have gone to NAB over the last 10 or 15 years probably didn't do the education tracks that were part of post-production world. It was a different thing. I mean, the people who worked in corporations who have relatively large budgets, when I was covering those sessions and would just pop into class after class, I remember asking myself, well, where do these people come from? And then I heard from a lot of people who say, this is a ton of people who work for relatively large companies. And at the end of the year, what's your continuing education budget? We have some. Well, we can send some of our key people to NAB. So those rooms will be filled with people working for large organizations who needed to understand how video got done and how it was changing. And there's there were very high level tech things where you just specifically drill down to something. But there were also kind of general things for the younger people coming on board to get them involved in how to do things. I mean, how things worked. So they've had that track going, but generations of people have come to NAB, gone to the booths, gone home, and never been involved in this education. And it's interesting to see how they're going to rejigger this for this new online world. And this will be the inaugural shot at it. So I'm interested to see what they do.
So in the past, way before I started going about 3 years ago, when Apple was there, right?
Uh-huh.
Did Apple have Final Cut Pro sessions? I know they had their wares and stuff, and they had that big booth where Blackmagic is now. But did they have Final Cut Pro sessions in those days? Do you remember?
So Final Cut Pro for me, this is legacy, not 10.
Right. Okay.
I first saw it at NAB one year, 1999 probably, because that's the year that it kind of popped up. And so I saw the first demo of it. Now, they didn't have breakout sessions that I knew about in the post-production world space, but they did have a show floor area cordoned off, and people were teaching Final Cut live there. And anybody who was walking through the aisle at the Apple booth, which used to be where Blackmagic is now, so it was like the key thing that you saw when you came in the door on the South Hall. When people walked into that, they would see all of Apple's stuff, and then there was a stage and demos constantly going on. And that's actually one of the first places I ever saw any Apple training for Final Cut take place. Okay. So it's always been a part of it. And then so let's now go way up to the future here, and we're talking about when Apple was still at NAB, but Final Cut 10 had come out. There was sessions in post-production world. I remember Steve Martin and Mark Spencer and some other folks would do specific tracks and help people. They even did Apple certification training on Final Cut on a track through that. I think Abba Shapiro used to teach those, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong. And if so, I apologize. Whoever actually did those full-scale 3-day-long get certified in the software tracks. But that did happen at NAB.
No, that I remember, because Future Media also put on these sessions in Washington, D.C., and that's where I got my first Final Cut Pro certification. Not even the trainer certification, just the regular certification, Abba Shapiro.
Right.
And he taught at the Washington Convention Center.
Yeah.
And I remember it was just it said something about certification in the description, and he asked live, do you want me to go over the certification exam?
Right.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Most of the people weren't there for that, but I was there very specifically for that certification exam.
Yeah. And I don't think people, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, some people getting a cert for a particular piece of software is just a business thing. It's like, I can put that on my resume, and maybe that will be good in my corporate career thing. I know I always saw it differently. I got certified in Final Cut 10 3 different times at 3 different levels, but it was purely because the way my brain works, I call it Swiss cheese learning. I get a piece of software and I learn this part of it, and then I have to do this in it. So I go over there and I learn that part of it, but it leaves big gaps in my knowledge. And so when I was serious about, wow, this tool is really working for me and I'm making sense out of it, and I want to talk to people about it, and I wonder what else it can do for me. The certification tracks that I took and just paid for myself, and I didn't expect anybody to ever ask me for a certification.
Right.
But it was structured learning that made sure I looked in areas of the software that I naturally wouldn't have looked in because they don't come up in the kind of work I do. And over again, what happened with me was that something I had done on a certification study thing just to pass the certification test would come up later, and I had this great feeling of relief, like, oh, I'm not out of the woods in this. I know how to do that because it was on the certification test, and it forced me to look at an area I wouldn't have looked at otherwise. So that, it depends on how people learn. I mean, some people become absolute ninja masters, and they never do anything formal in terms of training, and that's fabulous.
Yes.
The structure.
You're absolutely correct. And Final Cut, I was a trainer starting I found my badge. I went to Apple headquarters in New York, and that's where I took the class. And I found my badge the other day, 2000 and something. It was Final Cut Pro 5, not even 10. It was Final Cut Pro 5 I got certified at. Actually, the Abba Shapiro class was 4 or 4.5. That's what and that was not a trainer certification. The
Right.
5 that I went to New York for, I went to work for a company in Baltimore doing their Final Cut Pro support and stuff, and they paid for my trip up there to get certified as a trainer.
Right.
So that's what I did, and that was later. So Abbott Shapiro was with 4.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people. There was a lot of people in that class. I don't know, 50 people in this big auditorium kind of thing.
Yeah. My story, my very first class I ever took in Final Cut Legacy, not 10, was I think the very first class that was ever taught. And I was doing analog deck editing, and I saw this thing at NAB, and I said, well, I want to try it. I got the software. I cobbled together how to build something basic, but I didn't know much. And then one of my clients at the time, actually it was PetSmart, the large pet retailer, wanted to do a kind of a magazine program for their employees. They were just growing, and they had like maybe 800 or 900 employees at this point. They were pretty small. They got to a couple of grand. But I thought, well, okay, they want to do this magazine show. I got to learn how. I've got this new software. Let me go take a class. Where is our class? There was one class in Long Beach. So I flew over to Long Beach to take this class, and it was Steve Martin. And I think that's the very first class Steve ever taught about Final Cut. And that was a great moment in, wow, I got farther faster by getting some formal training than I would have if I just kept kicking the tires.
Imagine how different your life would be if that was Avid that you took.
Yeah. I would have taken an entirely different track.
And no arguing with people. All these, since 10 came out, all these arguments you have, they wouldn't have been there. You would have been supporting Avid. So.
Look at how it ripples down the years, because and everybody knows I'm a big Final Cut 10 advocate because it has done so much for me in terms of easing my workload.
Right.
But I feel exactly the same way. Here we are, how many 20 years later, and the biggest single thing that drives ease in my life right now in terms of making videos is the fact that I've been in this so long and I mastered this tool, and this tool just keeps making me relax. Tough deadline, complicated project, something I don't quite know how to do. I just keep thinking, well, I know this tool really well now, and this tool seems to, at every turn, like a turn like this shutdown, where all of a sudden, if you used to be in an office with large machines and servers and stuff like that, you're suddenly tossed home and you have to try to do your work on a laptop, on a desk, or on your ironing board.
Right. Ironing board's a good one.
This pathway has been something that has led me to think, yeah, okay, I'll do it on an ironing board. I don't care. I know the machine is going to work. I know the links I have from this laptop to the outside world will let me get my work done with just the way I'd normally do it.
Right.
In fact, that was a huge change for me when I dumped, my big systems and I just went to the laptop, and that was largely because of Final Cut Pro 10.
If Final Cut Pro 10 came to the iPad, could you ever see going to the iPad if it was kind of similar?
I don't want to say never, because I love the fact that you get into these circumstances. I mean, I never thought I could edit professionally on a laptop. It was out of my understanding. That's not how you edited. You needed a big machine next to your desk. In fact, for an era of my life, if you didn't have exactly the right cards and exactly the right connections and everything wasn't tuned perfectly, you could barely do DV, let alone 4K, 6K, and 8K, which is what we're facing now. So, it used to be that you had to be kind of an IT specialist to even work in video, because if you got one thing wrong, it was choppy and it was dropping frames and it was a mess.
Oh, I remember. I started, it was Carroll Community College in Westminster is where I started. And I first took web design. And this is the first time I ever touched computers.
Yeah.
I never touched a computer before that. And those were all Windows PCs. And I learned web design. And then I said, well, I went to the local cable community television access thing, and I learned deck-to-deck editing. The toaster, remember the video toaster? And 2 decks,
AB roll.
S video, and you had. So I was learning that. And I said, let me try some of this nonlinear stuff. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, it was Premiere on the PC, and it was exactly the same experience. Little postage stamp videos,
Right.
and it was constantly crashing. It was constantly crashing.
It all did. I don't care what box.
Okay.
Computers of that era were barely able to move video frames through their buses and everything else. It was hard. It was really hard, and you had to get things just right. Boy, is that a difference. You flash forward to today, and you go to any big box store and buy any laptop, and it's going to probably have some video editing capability in there, and it's going to do a decent job. So, that's just the evolution. And that brings up a whole bunch of different things you have to be concerned about because, all the machines can do it. Anybody who owns a machine can do it. So the nature of the industry, the profession, and everything changes because of that. And, you can fight it and be upset about it. And I know a lot of people are going, these kids coming in with their cheap machines doing cheap work. I get that. But it's always been like that. Always the new generation comes in with different technology and different expectations, and they upend things. But I think that's fun because I did it too 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And I keep doing it now.
Well, absolutely. So the one guy that broke he didn't break, but he reported that the Final Cut Pro was coming to the iPad a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. He's had some successes with his predictions, and he's also had some misses, of course, like anybody. He has a big following, over 100,000 people, and he did predict the 13-inch iMac. It's an iMac. It's a MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro 13.
The 13 that came out. He did predict the launch of that. So he said that Final Cut Pro and Logic both are coming to the iPad within a year or so. He didn't say now. This is one of his predictions. So that started the whole conversation about that.
Well, iPad OS has made great leaps and bounds. Clearly, Apple has put a ton of resources into making that work. They put a ton of resources into the iPad as a product. I mean, that is, it's hard to step back and realize what a transformative thing that is. I think I still have somewhere in a box in there my original iPad, which seemed like it was about this thick, and
right.
Even that was kind of miraculous, this whole touch interface and things like that. But a brand new iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil and the rest of that is an astonishingly powerful computer in its own right. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're rethinking how the software needs to react to interface. I think I've told you about a dozen times that one of the biggest changes in my professional life was moving from mouse to trackpad 100% of the time. And again, that was an accident. I didn't plan that and I didn't set it up. At one point, the laptop of the power level that I had in the very early days of Final Cut Pro 10 wouldn't run it. Or not the laptop, the it wasn't a Quadro. We were past that. The cheese grater. Right. I just had the wrong graphic card in it, and it wouldn't do that. And I thought, well, rather than buy a different graphic card, let me just try my laptop. And sure enough, because my laptop was 3 years newer than that tower system that I had, it ran Final Cut. So that's where I started learning it. And so I only had this one thing to learn that software on. So I started getting used to the geometry of trackpad. I just never stopped. And that became my normal for running Final Cut 10, and it is to this day, and I am delighted with the result. But I would never have changed. And I haven't touched a mouse in 5-6 years because of that, but it never would have happened if it hadn't been for Final Cut and laptop editing.
So you don't use a mouse at all? I use both. I have my trackpad too, and I have my mouse both for different things.
I know, and I know a lot of people who do that. And to me, that's the same part of the debate as I want an array of 3 screens in front of me when I edit. And I respect people who do that. That's how their brain functions. I look at it differently. The power of being able to be a serious professional editor on a laptop system, to me, has meant that I can edit when and wherever I want to. And that can be here at my desk. It can be on a train between here and Los Angeles, which I used to do a good little bit. It can be in a hotel room, on set, on location. And if I keep this consistent, if my brain sees edit as just this laptop, this trackpad without a lot of extra stuff. I do have an extra screen. I sometime use a second screen thing. And at my desk, I have a big 48-inch monitor floating above, but mostly that's for clients. That's what I mostly use it for, is if I have clients sitting behind me. And remember when we used to have that? It was nice.
Oh, yeah.
In that case, I can throw an image up for them so they don't have to look at all my actions while I'm editing and then try to focus on the smaller screen. They can just see the whole thing big. And the engineers at Apple did a great job of designing that. So you put an HDMI monitor tap into your laptop, and it understands there's another screen up there, and a couple of clicks, and especially on the new Touch Bar Mac Pros, you just touch the second monitor, and poof, there it is. There's your output monitor, your program monitor, essentially, in old speak.
No, absolutely. So I have a 2019. Did the 15 come out in 2019? I know the 16 did, but I thought
the 16 came out late as that with that whole rev. But
yeah.
It was the machine with the butterfly keyboards that was about 4 years. I never had to type on one of those. I was lucky. I had a really old laptop, a 2015, I think, late 2015. That I had maxed out when I bought it, and it really took me all the way up to my 2016. So I never experienced typing on what everybody said was a bad typing.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with it. But I don't type all day long.
Yeah.
So I understand if people did. Mm-hmm. I completely understand if they did.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it depends on your kind of workflow. If you're a casual user, some people today still are two-finger hunting peckers, and some people are really fast. I remember seeing an old reporter once at an NAB thing, and he was over on the side typing on his laptop, and that dude must have been going 160 words a minute with two fingers. It was just like a blur.
Wow. Yeah.
And so God bless him.
Well, the way they do their text on their phones with thumbs.
Yes, I remember when my son was growing up, he had friends who would come over, and, because I was in video, I was just cool enough to where occasionally they would want, okay, well, here, can I text you with a question or something like that? So I would start to type. I remember like 2 or 3 circumstances, some 14-year-old boy or girl saying, just, can I have your phone for a second?
Sure.
In 3 seconds, doing what would have taken me a minute to thumb type on an early phone. So you just learn. Different generations, different.
So do you have coffee?
I do have coffee.
Well, let's do a simultaneous sip here.
Now, there you go. Mm.
That was my second cup. I do 2 or 3 cups a day. That's my second cup. So
and coffee is a weird thing. That'll be a rabbit hole to go down. I just saw a big thing on Reddit this morning when I was cruising through some of the places I look at, and the guy who was actually a sociologist has done a big one of many, I'm sure, studies of coffee culture and third space. And I remember first hearing about third space when somebody passed by the original Starbucks business plan, which was, if I recall it correctly, exactly about that. It wasn't about selling coffee.
Huh.
It was about creating a neutral space where people could gather and interact, and but a place that was, I think, it was a beautifully written little proposal, and it said something like, a place that is not home but is not work is a neutral place where people can gather and interact separately from either of those two places to do all sorts of things, transact business, meet their friends, socialize, whatever. And I thought, wow, that was pretty brilliant. And I think, if I recall again correctly, the original business plan for Starbucks was that, and we will sell a commodity like coffee that has a high margin that we can use to support the real estate costs of building this system of third places. Anyway, it's interesting to.
So let's talk about Final Cut Pro.
Okay. Hey, cool.
So this morning I get up, I don't know, 4:30, feed the cats, get some coffee. and I was scrolling through Facebook, and I got this. Lee Herbert had a post on Facebook.
Lee's a great guy.
Yeah,
from Australia.
Yeah, and he had to post about this year's NAB Post-Production World's hosting a ton of amazing educational sessions. Blah blah blah. Paid track is $2.99, but the Apple track is free.
That's outstanding.
That's outstanding. It's a 2 days or 3 days, something like that. So that's very cool. I really like his that post. So I posted.
Well, remember from what Tim Cook said in that earnings call the other day, he said that they are seeing a massive spike in people downloading 10 and Logic and everything else in order to meet this work at home world. So I think they saw clearly that this was an opportunity. And it signals to me that maybe after all this time, after nearly 10 years, the reputation of Final Cut 10 as a true professional tool is coming more into line with its actual performance than that original confusion the marketplace had about how it works, what it does, and why it works the way it does.
You're being kind, calling it confusion.
Well, listen, this is disruption. Yes, editing was disrupted. And
it absolutely was. Yeah.
And right now our culture is being disrupted. To me, the fascinating thing is what's going to come out the other side. Because disruption is by nature messy and difficult, and it can even be horrible for people. And I have tremendous sympathy for everybody who's going through difficult times right now, and that is massive numbers of our friends and neighbors. Yep. But disruption is also opportunity. It means that old ways that are locked in place that you can't get access to, old ways of doing things are crumbling, and there will be new ways coming up. So the people who are well positioned right now to change their business model, their plan, their focus, how they do what they do, those people are going to have unusual opportunities now.
Yep. So let's talk about one of them. I'm going to bring up the post-production world online. So this is the free track. I don't know for sure, but I think Apple has something to do with this track. So I have it up right now. It's Post-Production World Online, May 17th through the 18th, so it's next weekend. And you can watch it on some of the tracks on Zoom and then some on Facebook Live. Michael Cioni, of course, is going to be there. Mm-hmm. And some other people. And I've posted that link. You can just go Post-Production World Online. I've posted that link a bunch of places. Thanks to, they popped it. It'll pop up, of course. It's, hey, you want to talk? No, I don't want to talk. I just wanted to pull up your ad for a second. And so they have a lot of things for 2 to 3 days. Now, here's the thing that I noticed is I knew about this a couple of days ago. I was chatting with somebody, texting back and forth, and I knew about it was going to be a free track, and I was pleasantly surprised. But this is a much bigger track than in the past, say the last 2 NABs that I've seen at NAB. It's a bigger Final Cut Pro track, I mean. It's more, Final Cut Pro and Apple stuff than I've seen. I mean, the last couple post-production worlds have been very kind of scarce on the Final Cut Pro, so that's nice.
It is, and I think there's a lot of there's good reasons maybe. First of all, we know the folks at Future Media Concepts, and they do both the Final Cut specific things. They do Premiere specific things. I think they do Avid specific things. So they're an education organization. Ben Kozic and all those folks and his daughters who are fabulous and who look like they're kind of getting more and more involved in the future of this stuff. So this may be something that lasts for a long time. This may be the start of how new forms of training get disseminated out to the public and how public can get access to this kind of information that we used to have to travel to NAB and spend a couple of grand on hotel rooms and the rest of that to get this information. This is a far less expensive, more virtualized, different, but maybe in some ways as powerful. This is the early stages of it. And I know that going to those kinds of things and learning more at conferences was one of the paths that led me to extra expertise over the course of the many years I was learning how to be an editor. So I'm excited that more people get that opportunity and that hopefully take advantage of it. I just think I think it's very cool. This is going to be a first year, so I'm sure there will be glitches and things like that. Just like in the very early days of any conference, they learn how to do something new. So I'm going in to be interested. I have a pass to the wider NAB thing. I want to look at how they're doing this Final Cut Pro 10 track. I want to look at how they're doing some of the engineering sessions and the other thing that have always been part of NAB. NAB's scope has been very, very broad. So it'll be interesting to see how this works. But I'm not at all surprised that Final Cut Pro 10 is a big part of it, if for no other reason than the fact that I think the entire production community has got to face the reality that for a home-based or a non-shop-based big money operation, 10 running on a laptop, maybe someday, as you say, 10 running on an iPad, who knows, is an extraordinarily efficient and affordable way to be a video creator in the modern era.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. So speaking of that, we're by any count, we're due for a Final Cut Pro update. I mean, the last bug fix was 4 months ago in December. Before that, it was the Metal 2 update back in October. But the last feature update was 18 months ago, 10.4.4. And 10.4 itself is now 29 months old. So we're due for something. Whether that's 10.4.9, whether that's 10.5, who knows. I just hope it comes before the summer. The summer is such a boring time for software updates. I hope it comes before the summer.
I understand what you're saying, and I absolutely appreciate it. And I know how delighted I have been when I have seen robust feature updates in the tool that I use to make my living. That has been
right.
a big thing. And for a while there, it felt like there was that competitive thing, right? That Premiere's got something new, and Avid's revising, and when's Final Cut? When's Apple going to revise things?
Right.
But looking back, I have to say, I'm looking back maybe 5 years. A lot of the times that we didn't get a big feature update, we did get something that was core important. I'm thinking the color tools. Was that 10.3?
But that's pretty big. I mean, that's a big feature, too.
It was huge, and it took a lot of time. None of us knew it was coming, but clearly they understood that color correction was going to be a bigger and more robust part of, people not working in shops where you sent it out to a colorist and you had to bring it back. People still do that, and there's still very good reasons, and professional colorists, like professional piano players, are worth their weight in gold. I mean, if you're a great colorist, you should work forever because you can make magic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you do much color correcting?
I'm a high level mediocre color
That's a good
guy.
way to put it. Yeah.
I've had to learn, but you sit me down with somebody who really does color, and I'm going to look like an absolute idiot, and should, because they've dedicated their life to that. It's Richard, it's exactly like everything else about this business. And the thing I love about this business, we have to be such broad thinkers. We have to understand, shooting to a certain degree. We have to understand lighting to a certain degree. We have to understand sound to a certain degree. We have to understand editing to a certain degree.
Yep,
now
absolutely.
we have to understand distribution and post to a certain degree. I mean, distribution, SEO and encoding and all the rest of this stuff. So to be a good quality generalist today, you've got a lot of things you have to touch on.
Yeah, I like to concentrate on a couple of things myself. Final Cut Pro and Logic is more than enough to last me the rest of my life.
Yeah,
because I'll be learning them forever. So I do a little bit of basic coloring. I do a little bit of motion tweaking things, but Logic and Final Cut are more than enough to keep me busy. So I like to concentrate on those too.
Yeah, I remember looking at motion the first time I ever saw it and opened it up, and I thought, well, let me just explore it. Let me look at the menus.
Right, right.
And I remember I got into, I think, behaviors or some
Sure.
part of motion, and I went, holy heck, there's like 400 terms here that I don't think I really understand, that I probably should understand. It's like the logic stuff, XOR, yeah, all
Right,
those,
right.
they have mathematical meanings behind them, but I don't understand it enough to understand how you're blending pixels with all of this stuff.
Exactly.
I probably need to learn that, but that is a rabbit hole, and that is in a $49 piece of software.
Well, look at the keyframe editor.
Yeah.
Bill. I would love something like that to be in Final Cut as a drop down. Just it's in the timeline. You can just drop it down. I do like some of the things about the keyframing in Final Cut, like the fact that you can grab 2 keyframes and just slide them over to retime them or whatever.
Sure, automatic range ducking. Slide at range, pull the center down. Right. You got 4 keyframes, and it's ducked.
Speaking of that, recently I've been using that a lot. I'm doing a podcast about my local community during this pandemic crisis and stuff, and I interview people, local personalities, some regular people, and it's happened more than once. I've taken the R, I've gone over top of the something in the timeline, and I go to drag in between it, and the whole timeline goes down. And I stop and I do it
targeting.
And I do it again, and it's sometimes it goes between it, sometimes the entire, and I can't figure out why it's doing that, but it's something that hasn't happened in the past. It's just happened recently.
For me, when that happens, sometimes I just hit Command plus, blow my timeline up a little bit, and it seems to refocus its attention on what I'm trying to get to. So try Command plus and Command minus to get your timeline a little bit bigger to try that again. That sometimes works for me, and that's a quicker solution.
Have you ever seen that happen where the whole audio line goes down rather than between?
Mistargeting? Yeah. If I'm in a wide view because I want to see the scope of what is happening around me, and my instinct is, let me just go fix that little thing.
Sure.
And, whether it's the precision of the pointer in grabbing the line I want to grab. And
this thing is so fiddly sometimes trying to grab the...
It's working at these levels of precision that are astonishing. I mean, when you think about, just take 1 minute of video and think about how many frames you've got and how many samples you've got in the video.
Right.
48 kilohertz, so 48,000 potential samples.
Exactly.
And with the way 10 works, you can go down and find that sample. You can it's nuts how much control you have if you learn how to use it, if you need to do that kind of stuff. Most people in day-to-day, though, you don't need that, right? Most people just want to get, okay, he's finished talking, let me cut, let me get to the next soundbite, let me cut there. And you're not trying to find the 48,000th of a sample to put your precise cut on. Now, there's another group of people who absolutely must have that.
Right. Well, speaking of that, I know that Final Cut Pro says they can go to sample level, but it ain't nothing. It ain't nothing like Logic.
No. The tool is sharpened to the point where you're cutting what you most often need to cut.
Right.
I mean, most surgeons can do it with a steel scalpel. Some surgeons, if you're, working on the brain or something, might need the laser scalpel to get down to the level of precision that is far beyond what a piece of carbon steel sharpened can get to.
And you don't need sample level in Final Cut because you're dealing with frames.
Yeah, and for everybody who's a medical professional out there who might be hearing this, I'm sorry. I'm sure I butchered that analogy because I know nothing about that. That's an idiot's general analogy.
So one of the things I really like about helping people if they have a problem, if I see it on Twitter and I can help them. Somebody on Twitter this morning, I was up early, 4:30, 5 o'clock East Coast, and somebody said, how do you delete a speed transition? So I opened up Final Cut, and I found 2 ways. Number one, you can change the speed on either side of the transition to 100% and it goes away. Mm-hmm. or you can just double click on the transition and there's a checkbox there that you click the checkbox on and off for the speed transition. So you learn things by helping people, and I like that.
The hierarchy of learning, right? Read about it and study it, do it, and then the level above that is teach it, because you've learned the same thing I have.
Absolutely.
Whenever you go to teach something, your understanding of it exponentially increases. And God bless the approach that Apple has always taken. There's not one way to do this thing.
Right.
You're at least going to have two. You're probably going to have three. You may have 5 different ways to do that. I can't tell you the number of times somebody's been over my shoulder and I've done some operation that I've been doing for 5.5, 6 years now, and they tap me and go, you could just do this. And I go, oh, wow, I never knew you could do that simpler, because my muscle memory, my habit was doing it the way that I first did it. And that got reinforced because I was successful with doing it that way. Doesn't mean it's the best way. And I'm learning all the time. It's why I love watching other editors edit, because I'm learning, how do they do that? Oh, there was a different keystroke for that? Oh, cool.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm just going to check the App Store. I always do this every session, just to check. Just to check to see if there's any updates, because we've had updates happen when we were on the air before. So, nope, nothing's there. It's still 10.4.8 from 4 months ago. So yeah. I wonder, just curiously, what exactly the Final Cut Pro team is doing for the next update as far as their launch schedule. Because just because they have a launch schedule doesn't mean they're going to get that launch schedule. It depends on what Apple itself is doing, which, of course, the next big thing is WWDC. Curiously, they announced WWDC on June the 22nd, and Final Cut birthday is June the 21st.
Oh, 21st.
The day before.
That'll be 9 years old.
Yes. So
almost a preteen now.
Yeah, exactly. It would be great. It would be great if they said, WWDC, Tim Cook came out and did a little. Tim Cook comes out and does a little Final Cut Pro demo. What do you think about that? What do you think the odds of that happening are?
As monstrously huge as Apple is right now, and with the opportunities, I mean, they're one of those companies that I think that understands and relishes disruption. They do, because that's where they've always been able to come in and carve out a unique niche that has turned out to be massively long-range profitable. I mean, when they saw the breakdown of music in people's pocket from cassette players and things like that, and did the iPod,
right.
the original one, and connected it to the licensing and messed up all the illegal download operations, stuff like that, and gave people a simple way to pay for something with so little friction that I just buy it. Flipped the entire commerce world on its head, and I think they love doing that kind of things. So there's a lot. This is an era of gigantic disruption. I'm sure they are 100% head down, thinking very hard about what these opportunities mean. What is Apple going to do? They are beautifully positioned, I think, because they have clouds and storage and expertise across the technology space. They understand manufacturing and what is possible and what can ship and how you get it places and how you assemble products. And they do that not just with hardware and products, but also with services and the deployment of services. I mean, we shouldn't forget the Final Cut Pro 10 on day one was the first $100+ thing that ever got distributed 100% digitally.
Good point.
On the planet. And they, you can look at it going back as a business study, as a proof of concept. Will people spend $300 to click a mouse and get a thing? And sure enough, they did.
Well, in the App Store, I would. Some other places, I wouldn't.
They had to have the App Store, and they wouldn't have had the App Store, and they wouldn't have had all the plumbing if they hadn't built it ahead of time. So the question is, as the senior executives at Apple survey the landscape of what they have, and then I presume and hope and expect look at what the world can need in terms of real needs for people to do things. What can they tune up and tweak to make it easier to serve people's needs better? And everybody knows right now that work from home, increased collaboration, increased access to the webs, those things are mission critical for humanity right now.
Yes, they are. We just got a comment from France. Hello, guys from France.
Hey, France.
Hope you. The guy's name is Jean Baptiste. He's from France. He says, "Hope you all good." We are
Bonjour.
good. We are both good. So some people, like yourself and myself, we're on the lucky side of this pandemic.
Oh my God!
Because we're working from home. I've been working from home for 3 years. My girlfriend's been working from home forever. So we're kind of used to it. And the thing about working from home now, where everybody is, it's going to be good for me when we get out of this, because I think I'm going to have even more business. People are not going to require me to come into their edit suites. If I say, hey, I'll give you a discount, let me get your hard drive and I'll do this stuff from home, because people are more used to it.
Yeah, and yes, and I utterly understand what I need to do with that is make more money to support myself and my family. I utterly get that. That is absolutely, totally legit. I do hope people, as they come out of this, understand that there's also, this also gives you the capacity to help. Yes. A little bit in areas. And I hope people continue to say, I can do this and I can work for that guy or that woman and help them build a business. But I hope people take a moment to say, do I want to support that stuff, whatever they're doing? This is a chance where there's going to be a bigger and bigger need for video communication for these kind of things. And you are going to get lots and lots and lots of legitimate, useful, socially responsible businesses. You're also going to get a ton of charlatans and goofballs. They're all going to come out of the work, and they all have the next best thing. And if you just do a video for me to promote this thing, we can make a boatload of money. And people always have done that. But it's, I think it's going to be a time to be extra wary too.
Sure. Well, you should always be cautious, especially dealing with the internet.
Yeah.
People think of, before the internet got really popular, what do you think about this? We're going to be able to do like a encyclopedia online. Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that.
Yeah. Listen, this is transformative. So I guess here's the thing that I'm saying. If you absolutely have a passion for something, but in your past, when you were working in the office that you got displaced out of, and you were utterly doing something that you hated doing, if you have these skills and these tools, there is nothing to stop you from saying, what do I want to train or communicate or promote or sell? And if you have a passion about it, this might be a great time to align what you can do with these tools with how you want to approach the world, and just pay some attention to that. You don't have to go back to a kind of a environment that you were uncomfortable in, maybe.
Right.
And if those people are going to hire you, you need to feed your kids. I'm not saying, oh my God, you need to suddenly be all 100% socially active.
Sure.
You do what you've got to do. But I just see these. I just remember I brushed up against a couple of clients over the course of building my business, and they did not resonate with me at all. They were legal. They were fine. In some cases, the one was a very, very big company, but I wasn't comfortable with them. So I remember how hard it was to say no when they asked me to do some work for them, because I just didn't like it. And the ones that I did work with, eventually I realized I was kind of picking clients that I felt like I could really wholeheartedly support. And boy, those were great places. Those are great people to work with and great places to work with, because they aligned with how I felt about what moves the world forward. So there's just a little piece of that maybe can go into everybody's thinking as we try to pull ourselves out of this mess and decide where we're going next.
So you have the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro, correct?
Correct. A week after it came out, I thought, okay, I've been holding off to see if something new came out. This is the new. Buy it.
What kind of external storage do you have for that?
On the one in my office, we're out in the voice booth, so I'm working on my older 2015 laptop because I have a whole second system out here. But on that one, it's attached to an OWC 10 terabyte Thunderbolt drive.
Okay. Wow, 10. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So how long do you think the 2019 will last you before you get another one?
Most of these, the last 3 laptops I've had, I've gotten at least somewhere between 3 and 4 years out of, and that's kind of what I try to budget for.
That's about the same as me.
Yeah, Apple builds very reliable. I'm not, they break. Everything breaks.
Sure.
I think my last one, that 2015, which is I'm looking at it right now because that's my second machine. This guy, I think the week after I bought it, there was something in the screen that the screen refresh wasn't right, so I had to take it back. And Apple immediately said, "Yeah, we're going to have it for 3 or 4 days. We'll replace the screen and give it back to you." And they did, and it's been solid as a rock for 4 years after that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying these things are hand-built Rolls-Royce perfect, but boy, when they work great, and they last for a long time.
What I meant was, as far as nothing breaking, but just as far as the OS and Final Cut running on it, so that to the point where you're satisfied with the speed and stuff. So about the same 3 years.
Yeah, back at the end of 3 years, unless they do something gigantic, and switch everything. I am going out in the marketplace. I'm going to seriously, I think, look for an iPad Pro and start learning how to do that. There are things about it that I don't need, but I'm really fascinated with what it's going to do. And I'm hearing from some of my friends who do some of the same kind of work that I do, not necessarily the media production stuff, but the I/O to the world. Because a lot of what I do nowadays is managing the distribution of client content out into the web. And so it's understanding all of these services like I use Vimeo Pro and Frame.io a lot, both of them. And so for me, understanding, okay, this is the circumstance where Frame is head and shoulders above everything else, and I really need to be in that space. And then there's something else, like maybe I need to deploy to somebody's corporate server. And one of the magic things about Frame is that it's kind of a walled garden in the best sense, in that its security is planetary class. And if you're working on something where nobody can see it, and sometimes I get those projects. I get a corporate project that has proprietary information, and they tell me ahead of time, lock this down. Nobody can see this. These are our sales feed, things, and this is competitive information, and, lock it down. So, yeah. In fact, I did winners reel for the Rocky Mountain Emmys a couple of years ago, and it was the same thing. Lock it down. Nobody can know who wins until after it does. So make sure that's in a secure environment. So we worked in Frame because that's all secure. Absolutely. Vimeo, on the other hand, is one of its magic things for me is that it gets around corporate firewalls really well. And what the IT department in lots of major corporations just say no to a lot of things. I mean, obviously they're going to say no to like YouTube. They're not going to put that on their page, right? Because they don't want their people. They don't want 1,000 employees spending time watching YouTube videos. So at the server level, they're going to blacklist access to that. What I've seen is that they don't. What's this Vimeo thing? And maybe the IT guys are really smart, and IT women are very, very smart, and they understand, but there's less waste of time, I think, in the perception. So if I'm going to deploy, if I want to do back and forth with somebody in a corporate C-suite, that's been a better route for me, is to go through Vimeo Pro. Sure. And so, that's the subtleties of these different services. You got to understand what they do and then use the one that best matches what you need to get done. So do you think we'll have an update to Final Cut in 2020? I think I know the answer. Yes, I think we will, because I think they had to have something ready to talk about at NAB. So I think there's something on the back that is probably finished, but in the environment, this is, again, I know absolutely nothing about this. And yeah, I do have friends at Apple and people who have gone to work for them over the years and the rest of that, but they treat me and everybody else exactly the same as they treat the rest of the world. you'll be talking to them and you say, what about that? And they'll just look at you and go, I can't talk about anything having to do with that.
I was
And they
talking,
don't do it.
yeah, I was talking with Brad Olson. One of the, I guess, was Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. Yeah, it had been the Creative Summit. And we were talking there with an Apple person. And the person started talking, turned and looked at me and said, "This is not for your podcast." I said, I would never, I would never reveal something, a private conversation. Never.
They have to work on,
But
under
I
that.
understand. I started laughing. I said, I would never do that.
Yeah, we all rail against it, but boy, it succeeded for them. In many ways that we could spend 2 hours talking about, but that's not useful. But as to the new version, I suspect that team has been working diligently for the past 8 months or however long it's been since the last update, and have plenty of things on the servers, the lockdown servers where they build and
Right.
iterate and fiddle
Right.
with features and stuff like that in 10. And I would imagine they had a bunch of stuff ready to go for NAB for that focus of the world on media production equipment.
Absolutely.
Then it didn't happen.
So the question is, so we both think we'll see an update in 2020. The question is, do you think we'll see it between now and WWDC, which is basically the beginning of summer?
Maybe if this didn't happen, and I think this is quite a possibility too, it's like the team was able to get these features and this stuff done out of their longer list, and they were ready to show those things at NAB. But when suddenly we don't have to show it at NAB, it's like, wow, well, we can then push even further. If we don't have to open the doors to the dream home on Tuesday, there are some other things we had in the back of our mind that we would have loved to have gotten ready in time.
Okay.
Let's just fall back and work on all the other stuff too, because we've got an extra couple of weeks, or in this case, months, or maybe even longer. Okay. It's like, the whole modern way software is done, it seems to me, is that you get it to a level where it's respectable, robust, and not wacky, and then you ship, and then you iterate and refine and iterate and refine, and you add and fix and iterate and refine until you're ready for the next module to get shipped, and then you start that process all over again.
Right. And then once they release it, they get more people testing it, so they find out if there's any bugs or whatever.
Absolutely 100%.
The couple of times that they released something and it had some kind of a bug, I think twice, they've put an update out within 30 days.
Yeah, and sometimes 4 or 5 days. It just we didn't understand all the use cases that our millions of users were doing it. We found out this is a problem. It was reported as a bug. We confirmed that it's a problem with the code. And if it was something simple that one or a few team members can focus on, fix, and update, that's why you get 0.01, 0.02, 0.03. They do those things after they're sure that fixing A won't mess up B and C and D.
Exactly. Well, we don't want them to mess anything up. I hear people all the time that say, well, I don't want a lot of features like Premiere Pro. I want stability and performance. Those are number one and number two.
Yeah.
Okay. And every update, but they can still, the team is still smart enough that they can do on top of those two. Of course, those two are the core ones, stability and performance. Absolutely.
And suddenly here we are in an environment where everything from ad agencies to movie studios and everything else had to shut down and send everybody to home, and everybody suddenly, and nobody saw it coming.
No.
What do they want? Stability, performance, and such a light footprint that you can put it on a laptop and get your work done.
Absolutely.
Whoa, man, was this a home run for those of us who picked this product in this kind of environment?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward. To seeing the direction that the new update's going to take, just to get an idea of where they're headed. I mean, some of the things we've been asking for, audio roles mixer, perhaps something. I think audio needs some more refinement or some more control or something in Final Cut. It would help me stay there more often.
I know.
Yeah,
Everybody feels the same way. Whatever it
exactly.
is, your orientation is, you want more things. And I talk all the time. I have a kind of, three friends in the classification of film editors, and a few friends in the classification of corporate editors, and more friends who do events, and friends who do art videos and stuff like that. And it's interesting when I'm in those chats with those subsets, how there are a few things that are the same, but a lot of things are different. And if your office circumstance, like if you've been working in an ad agency, all the ad agency people tend to have the same or similar types of things they want in the product, because that helps an ad agency workflow. A movie maker, there's a whole different list.
Yep. Yep.
Scene management or character management or story beat management barely matters to an agency cutter cutting 30-second commercials. Now, I'm not saying it's not relevant, and maybe those tools would be great. Maybe somebody could manage story beats in a 30-second commercial environment, and that would be a boon to them. But generally speaking, their focus is different. And so it's just who's the biggest voice out there, who gets pride of place in the features list. And I think Apple's done the best they possibly could in managing this, consistent with what the software and the hardware and everything else they've got to throw against those problems can do, and what affects the most editors the most often. And I got to give them props, because these are general purpose tools for a burgeoning public. And the fact that a YouTube editor and a $150 million feature film editor can sit down on a laptop with the same software running and effectively get their job done is pretty cool.
It's very cool. I interviewed Sean Lander this week, was it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this week.
I love Sean. Hi, Sean, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Did he say the words dupe detection too?
I said
and
it.
How many times?
I brought it up.
Good.
He's been working the video he just sold to like the top TV network of Australia, working on it for years and years and years. The Outback Brothers. It looked really, really cool. I think he's posted some more clips.
Awesome.
One of our
Absolutely
Facebook groups.
Awesome. And Sean's a great guy. And he's one of my favorite people, because we've teased each other relentlessly and viciously for 10 years now about that thing. But he's right. For people from a training, from a history, dupe detection was so powerful and so important. Right. It took so much stress out of their operations that I can easily see why that's the first pain point for them when 10 didn't do it the way they were comfortable with.
Right.
And even though you can do matchback things, that's not the same. And I've been lectured more and more times than possible. and he's right. But he's also a little bit wrong in that I talked to tons who did what detection, why? And these are people sometimes who have, millions of YouTube followers or something else. And they just don't do work that needs that at all.
Well, there must be a reason why they don't have it, right? I mean, the thing is that when somebody, it's so funny, people get jealous over their features that they want.
Well,
and when you mention a feature that they don't want, oh, we don't need that.
Right.
I'm the opposite. I want everybody to get all their features, as long as number one and number two, performance and stability, don't get sacrificed. Not to the point of being ridiculous, but I mean, in
which
a
is the
controlled
NLE
layout.
version of the fact that you want good, fast, and cheap.
Right.
Well, I want innovation, but stability.
Well, I want the Final Cut Pro team to earn their pay. Okay, they've got to be doing something. Right? They had to be doing something out there. They're not just having a picnic, even before the pandemic. So I just want them to earn their pay like everybody else does. So they have to, I think whenever 10.5 comes out, it's going to be gigantic. Even if they do an interim between now and 10.5 because of the pandemic, they might say, oh, we'll release these features now, and then we'll give us more time for 10.5. That's fine. Whatever they want to do. I don't really care about that, just as long as I just hope they give us something that we can play with over the summer.
I completely understand that, but I have to also remember that I've been through a period as soon as this pandemic thing happened and everything shut down. I remember sitting in my office and there thinking to myself, okay, this could see everything go away, or like what happened to me during 9/11 was I was about ready to do a whole bunch of corporate work for a big conference, and the conference was canceled, but I was extraordinarily lucky because they came to me and said, instead of all these presentations we were going to do live when we flew in all of our people, we're just going to do them as video. So my work actually increased.
Gotcha.
And I had a little bit of the same thing here. This thing hit, and one of the very first things that happened to me was I do work here in Southern California for a relatively large credit union, and they are very community oriented. So they wanted to do fundraising for a food bank locally because they could see, they're smart people, they could see that was going to be a massive need. So they said, we have to do an emergency shoot, and we're going to record the CEO, and she is going to talk about how important it is to raise money for these food banks who are going to get hit really hard. We got to turn this around, and we would like to get it on the air ASAP so that we're out there early saying, and the credit union matched, like they matched $50,000 of donations from anybody who saw this ad through the credit union to just support food banks real quick.
Sure.
And so we went into I need to get this done, and it was like Thursday. We shot on Thursday, and I needed to have it to all the broadcast stations on the following Sunday night. So a 3-day turnaround for something that, again, I love these kind of projects because some I believe in. I know it's going to do good for our community, so I wanted to get it done and get it done right. And after we got through that and successfully deployed to the TV stations and changed a lot of our workflows to get this out the door so fast, I remember thinking, thank you, Final Cut, and thank you, the machine. I've spent a lot of time learning how this operates. In fact, I've been studying this really for almost a decade now. But when I really needed it to get something done that I thought was really important to get done, it handled it beautifully. And I'm proud of those spots. They're not the most fancy things in the world, but we got from concept to creation to deployment in 3.5 days, respectively. And I heard just from them the other week that they raised way over $250,000 because they got this message out to feed people who are displaced and out of work. And you're just going, I'm so happy to have even been a part of that. And the efficiency and the confidence of, I can do this.
So before the pandemic hit, say like January, February, and last year, do you work with your laptop off-site or at your house more? Or is it about half and half?
I'd say before the pandemic, I'd say it was probably 60-40, 60 in my office in there, in the house. I have a thing that I've set up where I've got an edit desk and I've got a floating monitor above me, and I've got mine, and I've got 3 guest chairs behind me. And commonly before, the agency people and the others that I work with would come in and sit behind me, and we would collaborate on building messaging for our corporate clients. And a lot of that is just the painstakingly, all right, now let's look at the type and figure out, how the art director who's chiming in from behind me thinks the type should fit into this scene.
Now you got to have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now you got to have a glass panel between you and them when they come in.
Well, now we're doing it.
They can tap on the glass panel.
Now we're doing it virtually.
Bill, do this.
So I hang an iPad or my iPhone next to me, and I Skype or FaceTime or Zoom or something in, and turn it around. They'll be able to see the screen, or I turn it around, I can see them, and that's how we recreate that. And you can do 2 or 3 people. You can do essentially what we did in my office. It's not exactly the same, and yes, but you can functionally make it work, and it's effective. You can get the same job done.
Well, absolutely. This whole pandemic has certainly changed everything as far as working from home / working remotely. Absolutely. So.
And you and I are just extraordinarily lucky that we went through that journey over the course of many years and tested and figured out what worked and what didn't work. as opposed to the many, 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 many people who, editing was 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, because
Right.
how editors,
Exactly.
at the shop, and then I go home, and home is my away from work. And you and I have figured out how to balance that so we're not constantly on, which is the trap of work from home.
Exactly. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. When I worked at the National Archives, the email system was on a PC, and I didn't have a PC. I was on the fifth floor. I had a suite on the fifth floor, and I had to go all the way downstairs, and the passwords wouldn't work half the time, and I had to go to the IT department and get it reset. And so I started using my personal email, and I did that for the majority of the time I was there, which was fine. I mean, because I could answer that from my house over the weekend or an evening. I could answer people back and forth. I didn't have access to the network and the PC email from home. I mean, they gave me one of those, some kind of a key thing that worked some of the times it didn't.
Yeah. The biggest boon to me, though, has been, I'm really lucky. I live in San Diego, and we had probably 6-7 months ago, AT&T rewired us with fiber. And that has been gigantic for me because I have gigabit up and down. And so
you're lucky. We don't have competition up here in this part of Maryland. We don't have the optic fiber and the fast cable. I have the fast cable. I got the highest tier besides business. So I can get up to 900 megabits per second up, and I can get typically between 10, but more likely 25 to 30, that down, and then 25 to 30 up. So I'm pretty good there. But I would love to have competition between the fiber optic, 1 gig up and down.
Yeah, we don't actually have competition. I think this is all AT&T here for fiber.
Okay.
But the thing is, I think San Diego Qualcomm is here, and I know Apple even has a lot of research stuff in this part of Southern California having to do with their cellular, because everybody knows 5G is coming, and how much of a change that is going to be in terms of bandwidth. It's massive. It's a kind of an order of magnitude change rather than just an incremental change. So I think they're doing a lot of research around here, and I'm wondering if that's part of why they looked at San Diego and said, okay, you guys are going to get some fast fiber fast. Anyway, I got a ping from one of my buddies who works at Frame.io, and they were saying, we got this new thing coming out, this new transfer app. Would you be okay with giving us a hand and testing a little bit of it? So starting a few days ago, I was doing some file folder transfers to help them with that. And that was like one of those, whoa, we got a bit of the future here.
Right.
Like everything else, it is going to depend on your internet speed.
Sure.
So it's not going to it's not going to suddenly mean that you can do a gigantic file in 1/10 of a second if your home bandwidth doesn't support that. That's always going to be the limiting factor. But I have to report that I'm lucky with this gigabit up and down. I'm getting like 940, 950 megabits a second up and down.
Yeah, up is incredible. That's incredible for up.
I know. But so they asked me to test it, so I did. So I brought down a folder of files, and it had video, it had PDFs, it had just a folder off of my Frame.io account, and I dragged it down. It took just a hair over a minute and 2 seconds to get, I think it was 6.9 gigabytes of content down. And the little light went on and go, okay, sooner or later they're going to deploy this kind of technology around the planet, and everything is going to change in terms of the ability to effectively work remotely anywhere you want. I'm a little disappointed that over the course of the last 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, while there were initiatives that far back to try to increase broadband across the country, they all seem to fizzle out, and we haven't done much in the last period. And man, whatever reasons why, this in a digital economy really is a massive competitive advantage. Because if you can take things like live video and work with it the same way we worked with text on a page, that fluidly, the options become extraordinary. And we're all doing, these Zoom things. We're doing
right.
All this stuff becomes utterly different. Now, still the rest of the cloud infrastructure has to catch up, because even on this hugely high-speed thing, if it hits from me to the first router incredibly fast, but as it propagates through the rest of the internet, it pings around through slow connections, you're only going to be as fast as the slowest switches and routes your stuff gets sent through.
Absolutely.
So you can spend all the money in the world and get the best internet service to your house that's possible, and that doesn't ensure that you will be able to get these end-to-end speeds, at least yet. But hopefully, over the course of time, that will get even better.
Well, I want to say hi to the Final Cut Pro team. I know they watch these. Hi, guys and gals. We're anxiously waiting the next update to Final Cut Pro.
Well, I suspect that most of them are at home too. I mean, they're virtually working just like everybody else is.
Absolutely.
And so, they're having to. It's a little bit like, your regular office has been flooded, and they said you got to work from home for a while, and so that's disruptive, and you don't get it right up to speed the day you go home.
Speaking of that, what do you think is going to happen to the cubicle in the space that compared to?
Man, that's such a virtualizing workspace.
I mean, but just physically, and if you have to go back to this office and you cubicles next to each other, are they going to put up plexiglass compartments now going back? I don't think I've ever worked in a cubicle. I don't think so. I've always had my own edit suite, so.
Yeah, I saw a great piece on NBC News. I think it might have been somebody else. I'm not sure of the branding, but it was great because they went into one of the hospitals that was dealing with the influx of COVID patients, and they had all these. This was during the period they were ramping up, trying to think, we got to make sure we do this. And they talked to a relatively young woman. I'd say she was probably 30-ish, who was the HVAC technician. And her job was to go around and measure positive and negative pressure on the air vents coming into the patient receiving rooms, because they needed positive air pressure in the room so that they could get rid of any viral particles in that circumstance. And that's where the people with the viral particles are coming. This is the COVID ward at the hospital. Right. And watching her worked so hard to make it possible for the hospital to reconfigure to take care of people was joyful, because she took it very seriously and she was doing a fabulous job, and they were doing it based on measuring air pressure at every single vent to make sure that they didn't make a mistake and spread stuff.
I saw a post this morning. I had to check it to make sure it was true. There was a pandemic during Woodstock in '69.
Was there? Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, 100,000 people died in the United States. I don't know how many millions died. I forget which. It was N2 something 3. There was a pandemic that year, and it's just like they went to Woodstock. Good Lord.
Is that in 63? Was Woodstock in 63?
No, it was 69.
69. Okay.
I had to check it to see if it was true, and I checked it on Snopes, and they said it is true. It absolutely is true.
Interesting. So a pandemic with a different profile.
Yeah.
This is so weird.
It killed 100,000, and that was when our population was half as what it is now.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Fascinating.
Fascinating. So what was I going to ask you? Something about, so I guess that's just about it. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you, but I'll think of maybe I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't.
The minute we disengage, you will remember it, and it'll turn out to be the most fascinating topic we never talked about.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it was. Of course. What's your prediction about the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit this year? Yay or nay?
Oh,
because it's a limited amount of people, and I think they could run everybody through Apple headquarters and get them all tested before they get to go to the Juniper Hotel. They can do Apple. I'm
going to say I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. It would be lovely, and I will petition Zeus and everyone in Valhalla to please. I'm trying to be completely agnostic about it.
Right, sure.
I will petition everyone to please make that happen, because that would be awesome and wonderful.
I agree.
I'm skeptical right now. I think it's more likely that maybe FMC will, if they're successful in virtualizing NAB or parts of NAB, that will be them going to school and learning how to do these. And if they can figure out a way to register people online and have virtual presentations that are as close as you can get to what we would have gotten there, that would be great. I think that's more likely.
Well, they can put us, remember the cone of silence?
Yes. Oh, God, yes. Yeah, Don Adams, Get Smart.
Yeah, Get Smart.
One of the great TV gags of all time.
It was fantastic. I love that show.
Absolutely. Utterly.
So maybe they can do the cone of silence for everybody.
Yeah,
just everybody come in, you get this cone and you walk around. But the thing about the Creative Summit is you're just meeting the people. Yeah. Going to Apple headquarters and seeing the team in person, having them come to see us. It's all about meeting.
Maybe somebody will come up with viral suits. So we'll have like a loose plastic suit with a bubble.
Sure, Apple.
A little filter pack.
Sure. And we can still shake hands with the plastic wrap on our hands.
Gloves, plastic to plastic. Maybe
I guess that'll have to do a lot with whether these hotels are opening up. First off, if they're not open, then that's not going to happen. Are they open in California? I guess not, right? The hotels? So they having people?
I know for a fact, because my son happens to be right now in Seattle. Someplace. I don't even know exactly where it is. He's somewhere in Northern California, and he was on the move because he was up there, and he said, am I going to find a place to stay? And sure enough, he found a room at a motel. So motels are still operating.
Okay.
Now, you're talking convention hotel. That's a kind of a different beast, right?
But it is only 150 people, 120, 150 people. It isn't like it's, tens of thousands like NAB. But
I think here's my hope. I hope that the medical experts who are hopefully tracking this learn enough about this virus so that they get some certainty about how the transmission really takes place and exactly what kinds of things. And I hope within finding that out, they find that there is a way to suppress the chances of transmission enough, even before a virus, so that there's a clear set of guidelines to saying, if you do these 10 things, you reduce your chance to 1 in 5,000 of getting it, which may be an acceptable risk level.
Sure.
Nobody's ever going to, you just don't, 1 in 5 ain't going to cut it.
No. Did you ever get the NAB crud? I never got that.
Yeah, I got a couple of years. I came back and had, it is a inflection point for people from all over the planet who, kind of must come. In those days, it was like if you're working on a team in wherever it is, Norway, South Korea, Brazil, and you are doing a product demo at NAB, all your people are going to fly there. And you've spent the year getting ready for these demos. So unless it was something, a little set of the sniffles did not stop people from going. And that's, and we used to think in terms of a little set of the sniffles. It was probably some rhinovirus, like common cold or something like that. But yeah, maybe out of 10 years, maybe that happened to me twice.
Right. So
3 times.
Even last year and the year before, I am religious about washing my hands constantly.
Sure.
I always have been. When you're in shaking hands. No problem. I'm going to use the restroom now. I'm going to wash my hands.
Right.
I didn't use the liquid stuff. I bought some, but I didn't really use it.
Yeah.
I used the restroom. Soap and water and paper towels.
I need to go out more because I'm bad. I still touch my face a lot, and I shouldn't. I know I should be more sensitive to that. But, my wife and I are here, and we don't go out at all, and this has been fine. She does the shopping, and she's very careful about sanitizing after she comes back from any exposure out there. But, So I haven't stopped. If I had been in a circumstance where I was shooting more, I've shot twice since we went on lockdown, and both of them we were scrupulously careful, all the PPE that we needed.
Sure.
But if I had to go out and shoot regularly, I think I would have trained myself not to do this. But I haven't found the need to yet.
Well, it's a habit that's hard to break. But I think it's more if you've been out in public and then do this. If you're at home and your home is fairly secure and like you said, we don't have anybody in here.
Right.
My brother showed up a few times. I kept him out on the porch. I said, I don't want you coming in, and I don't want to expose you to anything, and I don't want you to expose me to anything. So
I have a niece and nephew here in town, and they both work in healthcare. One's a physical therapist, and the other works in ERs occasionally. And it's like, we adore you. Please FaceTime us. I miss them terribly, and I want to have more interactions, but you just have to be reasonable right now.
So here's some really, really positive story I posted on my Facebook page the other day. There's a woman in Westminster, Maryland, about 12 miles from here.
I was thinking London. Okay,
no,
Maryland.
Westminster, Maryland, 104 years old.
I think I saw this story, Richard. It's awesome.
She had the coronavirus, and she survived.
Was that the same woman who had the Spanish flu and survived that?
Maybe. This is 100. Her name is Vivian. It was incredible. I posted it. It's just wow.
I know.
Absolutely wow.
I know. And that, God bless her family, and everybody else. And those are kind of things, that's the problem with this silly thing. If it was just cut and dried, here's how it works. You do these things, you're okay. You don't do these things, you're not okay. That would be so lovely. That's the anxiety right now, is that you don't really, even if you listen to nothing but the best, highest quality information, the problem with the highest quality information is they will not tell you something unless they have double-blind study tested, proved it.
Right.
And so you get this, I think this is right, but they're not going to say, you do this. Most of the people who say, do this, take these pills, take this vitamin, you won't get it. If they're sure, I write them off as crackpots because
that's exactly right. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. We'll find out.
The best in the world do not know. And I'm not a big believer in the conspiracy stuff because it's human nature. Conspiracies are incredibly hard to pull off.
Yep.
I mean, somebody's going to go out the back door and want to be the special person to blow up the conspiracy.
Of course, the more people you have, the more that is.
Utterly. So I don't know. That's the truth of the matter. Is we should all be saying I don't know exactly what's right, and I need to be humble about the fact that I'm just going to try to do the best I can to get the best information I can to make the decision.
So I am going to be watching WWDC for sure. Good. Very, very anxious between now and then, and I'll still check for any update that sneaks in between now and then. But I think that's it. Anything else?
No, I think. How long have we been on?
Hour and 34 minutes.
My God. All right. Yeah, it's just fun to be talking, and I hope we've said something that's been useful to people. I think it's a really. I mean, I look back 10 years ago. I was still working predominantly in big shop kind of. I would go out to do production into the TV stations or the dedicated production facilities, the standalone cities, big shop. And you go forward 10 years, 15 years, especially 20 years, and everything has changed. And we are set up to be able to be the people who can help people communicate going forward. And I think it's a privilege to be in this position, so we have to try to use it the best we can.
We absolutely do. And I want to say thanks to the Final Cut Pro team, wherever you guys are working from home.
Yeah, absolutely, everybody. Thank you. And get it done as you usually have, as right as you can when it's ready, and let us know what it is. And
surprise us. Yes.
Yeah. But also right now, your tools are helping a lot of us communicate very important information sometimes, if we're lucky to be able to, stream like that. And so thank you for helping us do that. When it's used correctly, it can really change people's lives, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. All right, Bill, thank you for joining me again.
You're welcome. Good to see you as always.
Absolutely. We'll talk to everybody later.
Adios.